Over the last few days, the play-in stage of IEM Cologne 2024 has been going through the motions. 16 teams threw down in a double elimination best-of-3 bracket to see which 8 teams would be joining the field in the main stage of Cologne, which is going to be starting tomorrow. Just a few days ago, we made our predictions of what you should have been expecting to happen throughout the duration of this play-in, so now we're here to recap the whole thing, talk about who will be entering the venerated halls of the Lanxess Arena, how we got there, and who has been cast out from the cathedral this time around. There is an absolute ton to talk about, so we're going to skip all the pageantry, the pomp and circumstance, and we're going to get straight into the action. All I ask from you guys is to consider leaving a like, comment, and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. This is going to be the #1 place for you to be for all of your IEM Cologne same-day recap coverage, so I hope you enjoy, and without any further ado, let's start talking Counter-Strike. Okay, so first things first, if you didn't catch my last video, let's talk about the teams that I personally predicted would be making it to the main event. I predicted that Liquid, Heroic, the Mongolz, Complexity, 9Z, Falcons, Furia, and Eternal Fire would make it through this play-in. Of those 8 teams, the only 2 misses during my predictions were Eternal Fire and Heroic. The teams that qualified instead of them were Pain Gaming and SAW. Now overall, things still pretty much went exactly how I thought they would go. Even in that video, I talked about how Eternal Fire were inconsistent. They could be very good, they could be flip-floppy, they could qualify, they could not. And also with Heroic, there was the giant asterisk of them having to start off this tournament with yet another stand-in, which pretty much guaranteed they would be going down a series early. Coming from behind in a format like this is never easy, and it's even harder when you haven't had time to play with your full correct lineup and you have your last player, who is also your opper, a very important piece of the team, coming in late and then having to get warmed up for competition right away. It definitely sucks that Heroic will not be making the main event. This whole visa situation is just such an unfortunate thing to deal with. It's no indictment against Dexter as a player, because when he got here, he played well. It's just so hard to put your team in that situation and have it happen in 2 back-to-back events that really affected Heroic's chances. It just, like I said, it just sucks. As for Pain and SAW, who qualified in those 2 teams' places, we'll get into more detail in just a little bit on how they did, but on the surface, I think these 2 teams making it is great. Pain continues to impress as the 2nd best team out of Brazil, and I was really happy to see SAW have a bounce-back tournament after being on such a bad streak of form prior to the player break. With that, let's go ahead and start talking about our teams who did qualify. Once that's done, we'll take a moment to talk about some of the teams who didn't qualify. And because we're talking about multiple series for each team, we're going to keep things pretty broad, pretty general, and just talk about the vibes of these teams going into the main event, narratives you need to keep an eye out on, how the teams are performing, that kind of stuff. Now, as you know, brother, I do nothing but piss and bleed the red, white, and blue. So we're going to start by talking about the Americans, starting with Complexity. Now, in my heart, I knew we had nothing to worry about. Complexity should have been qualifying into the main event every single time. Like I said, top 10 team in the world, and unless they had some weird bracket situation where they were going to draw a Liquid or something, I was just not concerned in my heart about Complexity getting through. However, in my brain, I know and I understand that Complexity are an inconsistent team. So would I be sweating just a little bit during either of their series? Turns out, yes. Thankfully, they still won both of their series 2-0. They beat Alternate Attacks and then played Eternal Fire in the upper bracket game. In terms of how the team is looking, Elise had a 1.3 rating over 4 maps, good for the 4th best player in the event. Complexity were overall the 2nd highest rated team, only beat out by 9Z, who were gapping the field, something we'll talk about more in just a minute. Overall, I was glad to see that the vibe looked better. Obviously, the Blast Fall groups did not go great for Complexity, a lot of heartbreaking rounds, so I hope the victories here were good at kind of raising some morale, getting people ready to go. In terms of the other players, I thought JT, Floppy, and Grim all had great moments across both series. The big concern for me right now is HALZERK. HALZERK did not really play good in either series, and he was not only visibly frustrated, audibly frustrated, he was smashing his desk so much that Yanko went as far as to literally call him out on stream and demand that he fix his behavior. It was that inappropriate. HALZERK does not seem to be having a great time, and it's affecting his performance. And unfortunately, the reality is, when you're in a team environment like that, you can't have one guy losing his mind. Like, it's going to affect the vibe of everybody else. HALZERK has acknowledged that it's a problem and it's something that he's worked on, and it's not been bad before, but it's only become an issue recently, and that's understandable. We all get angry about the game. I'm not gonna beat him down over this, but it is definitely concerning because could it destabilize the rest of the team? We'll have to wait and see. Elige continues to look great. If Elige can have impact, and importantly, can Grim maintain his form? Grim was the 2nd best player for Complexity so far. If Grim comes to the server and plays to the level that he can, then Complexity will be a threat in the main event. but they're through for right now. We'll see how they perform in the next stage. The Halzerg story was by far one of the most interesting narratives in this tournament. I promise we'll get through some of these next teams a lot quicker. Let's start off by talking about Team Liquid, the other great American hope. Team Liquid continue to be undefeated in series play since the new roster debuted. That's obviously great. And what I like about these 2 series wins they had to qualify to the main event is that they had to work for it. In their opening set against Pain Gaming on Anubis, Pain pushed them to overtime, really had them on the ropes, looked like they might even be able to steal a map off them. And along the way, Twist did not have a good game, his first bad game since becoming an in-game leader, so the rest of the team had to step up and fill the gap. JKS in that series, great impact, Nafly, consistent as always, and then Ultimate. Ultimate has been the best player on Liquid at this tournament, and so far his adjustment to the tier 1 level has been very fun to watch. I think this guy is legit. I will continue to harp on that. His eye test looks awesome. He's incredibly calm and collected in the clutch, and he looks like he's piloting the op and the rifle at equal levels and getting great impact. The other Liquid player that has looked really good since this roster debuted is Yakindar. Yakindar's turnaround so far, and obviously small sample size, has been wonderful to watch play out. He looks so much more involved, happier, just willing to participate, and his entering has been at an elite level in all of these series. Not only has he been entering really well, he's been taking multi-kills, he's been doing clutches on the CT side, he's been there when other players have gone missing. Yakindar went from being one of the worst aspects of this team to one of the best aspects in just the shuffle. His return to form, impressive as hell. In their follow-up series against Furia, once again, they got really tested. Furia hit them in the mouth on Anubis. Yuri had that incredible game against them, putting Liquid behind going into map 2. And after that, Liquid navigated a very calculated, very well-executed reverse sweep to win Nuke and Mirage. Once again, Ultimate, best player for Liquid, 53 kills, 39 deaths over 3 maps, against an honestly pretty good Furia team. And listen, I may be buying into the hype just a little bit, but I'm taking Liquid as a dark horse team to make a series playoff run at this tournament. They are really looking good. Next up, let's take some time to talk about 9Z. 9Z were the best team in the play-in by far. They averaged a team rating of 1.33. 4 of their players were in the top 10 individuals for this play-in, and they stomped both of their series. And now you, the viewer, may be wondering, just how badly did they stomp out their 2 opponents? Well, in their first series against 3D Max, they held them to 7 rounds. Over both maps. It was crazy watching the South American mixed team cause one of the biggest French retreats I've ever seen since World War II. And then in the following series, they play MIBR, and you'll credit to them there. MIBR pushes 9Z on Ancient, takes to overtime. 9Z still win. And then we go to Nuke, and 9Z beats MIBR 13-2. So outside of 1 game on Ancient, 3 of their games, they held their opponents to a total of 9 rounds. What the... I don't really know what to make of 9Z. They have been on an incredible run of form going back to IEM Dallas. I don't know if this team is just breaking out to become a new potential top 10 team in the world or what, but like, their scalps they are taking at these tournaments are like legitimately impressive. Going back to Dallas, they beat Mouse, Liquid, Vitality before losing to G-Stu, and then they've just been dominating the tier 2 scene in Brazil in the meantime, and now we come here, and it looks like they're going to continue this run of form. Like, what are they going to do in the main event? I have no idea. The ceiling for this roster seems really high. They play good tactical Counter-Strike, and it seems like everybody on this team has moments where they step up. It would definitely be cool to see these guys take a big series win off like a top 10 team, and I think they're good enough to do it. Moving on to by far the most surprising team to make it out of this field, and that's SAW. Not only did SAW make it, they beat both of their series and were one of the first teams to qualify. In my predictions, I said that SAW were a team that since the major have been on a pretty awful run of form. They had this incredible peak where they looked really interesting at the major and failed to reproduce after, and they fell to the wayside. But I knew that at its core, this team had some potential. Maybe they're going to be able to recover that form post-player break. They walk in here into the play-in, and so far, they've shown an incredible turnaround. First off, Udrix has had an incredible start to the tournament. He's averaging a 1.26 rating over 6 maps. He's been by far the best player for SAW along the way. And alongside him, not only have they been playing better team Counter-Strike, Roman, Story, Eridaz all had moments of great impact. Story looked great on the AWP in both of these series. And the big change that has seemed to have the most impact is they recently swapped coaches. And whatever happened in that coaching change, this team looks so much better tactically than they did in their previous tournament appearances. They no longer look scared to take map control on the T side, they look very coordinated, they're working off each other better, and that's enabling their stars to have more impact. They beat Mongolz in their opening series, and Mongolz are no slouch. Please make no mistake, the Mongolz are a great team in their own right, and they navigated a great 3-map series against them, beating the Mongolz on Anubis and Dust 2, and losing on Ancient. They followed up with another great series win over Big, and going into the main event, if Story and UJers can continue to be this great 1-2 punch they've shown so far, this could be a repeat of what we saw at the Major, where if they get one of the weaker top 10 teams like a Verse Pro, we can see a repeat where they upset someone like that, like they did Cloud9. I'm just glad to see them playing well again because this team is very fun, and I hope to see them continue to improve over time. Speaking of improvement, I am very happy that the next team that made it was Pain Gaming. Pain Gaming, I would consider them the second best team in Brazil behind Furia, but honestly, if you told me that you liked Pain more than Furia, that they were your number one, I would not blame you whatsoever. And at first, I thought what was so cool about Pain was just Bigazera. I thought he was the best part about this team. He's a great IGL, I think he's really blossoming into a world-class IGL, and along the way, he's been no slouch with the rifle in his hands. But it does look like this team is continuing to get better as a unit. Lux has been the best player at the event so far, but NQZ and Bigazera aren't that far behind. Kawaz has had maps of great impact along the way too. Probably the only mark against Pain right now is that they aren't able to finish series cleanly. They're not 2-0ing anybody right now. Imperial took them to 3 maps, MIBR took them to 3 maps, and then they lost to Liquid. The loss to Liquid is fair enough, Liquid are on an upward trend, but I think they should be beating Imperial and MIBR a bit cleaner than they let happen. And while I really do like this team, they are missing that X factor, that true star player, that one who really takes them to the next level, one who could be like a real top 10 player in the world, someone who can really be transcendent with a rifle, maybe sometimes pick up an op. You know, the kind of Brazilian talent that people might compare as the next Coldzera, someone who really transcends the curve and can really hold on a world level. Someone who, up until the player break, had been in a pretty terrible contract and a team that was underperforming, so maybe now in free agency he might decide to make a move to better his career, but instead chose to sign another death contract, staying with a team that only moderately improved itself thereafter. Who could that player be? I don't know, I'm not naming any names. Brazilian power struggles aside, let's move on and talk about the Mongolz. The Mongolz are a weird team for me to talk about at this point, at this stage with this roster, because we kind of know what they're about. The Mongolz continue to be a very good team just on the outside looking in. They are going to be good enough to make the qualifiers and qualify into big events fairly often. They're going to make those big events and then proceed to not do a whole lot of much because they're not good enough to beat the top 10 teams. They're easily the best team in Asia, but Asia is just not that strong of a scene as a whole. So yeah, overall, they played a really entertaining series against Eternal Fire to qualify. They beat FlyQuest 2-0, that was definitely expected. And then I don't think anybody saw them losing to SAW because no one knew what to expect out of SAW in this tournament, so I can't really blame them for that one either. Overall, they're in the main event, but they'll continue to do what the Mongolz always do. They'll make it into the big tournament, they might get an upset here or there, but they're not a serious team to make a run. Our second to last team to qualify were the Falcons, and they did alright here. They lost their opening series to Eternal Fire, which fair enough, that was Zontaras having a monster series against them. He had 60 kills over 3 maps, so he was looking insane, but even then, Falcons, they could have won this. It was very close on Dust 2, they narrowly forced overtime. And even though they lost, it wasn't the biggest deal because they delete alternate attacks 2-0 in the follow-up series. Along the way, it's nice to see that Sampaias is having a bounce-back tournament. He needs to have great impact for this team to succeed, so it's nice to see him top in the charts. And even though Big gave them a competitive series, the Falcons took care of work to qualify. In that closing series, they win 2-1, and once again, it's Sampaias leading the way. He's the best player in the server, he's gapping the next closest player by almost 20 frags, he's having insane impact with the op in his hand. So now they're moving on. Do I expect the Falcons to do well in the main event? As you guys know, I'm not the biggest fan of this lineup. I don't have much faith in them. I think Sampaias needs to have a ridiculous performance for them to do it against some of the better teams in the world, so we'll see. And our last team qualifying to IEM Cologne were Furia. And I have to say, I am a known Furia skeptic. I am a known falling criticizer. So take it from me when I say that Furia, they looked really good here. I think there are a lot of good signs if you're a big Furia fan, because 1, Skulls did really well in their closing series. 2, Fallen had some incredible impact with the op in his hand. 3, Yuri had great impact in various series, he looked electric against Liquid. And 4, they didn't need K Serato to hard carry them to win their games. That's the biggest difference that I see out of Furia. They play better as a team right now. If Skulls can maintain his impact, it's going to take a lot off of K Serato's shoulders. And if you're looking for one series to go watch out of this play-in to get ready for the excitement tomorrow, go watch Furia against Heroic. It was one of the last series played today, and it was a 3-mapper, an exciting series, and we got to see a little bit of everything that's great from both of these teams, other than Tessa's kind of just being missing throughout. Dexter had great moments, NeRAAAAAAAAAAAH had great moments, Fallen had some insane impact on Mirage. It was just a great series from both teams. Furia, they clutch it out to qualify. It sucks that it comes at the expense of Heroic not making the next stage, but you know, them's the breaks sometimes. Really, if there's one thing I'm taking away from this play-in, no matter what, is that South American Counter-Strike is really starting to level up its game. We're looking at a point where South America is arguably already better than North America in terms of talent, and it's clear we're going to have a Brazilian or South American team get into the top 10 and stay there for a while pretty soon. So those are our 8 teams going on to start the event tomorrow. Let's take a second and talk about some of the teams who didn't make it, but were still interesting. The first of which is Eternal Fire. Eternal Fire were very close, just a few rounds away from beating the Mongolz and making the main event, and that sucks because Zantares once again had another monster tournament. He was the best player on this team, he was like a top 5 player in this event, and his impact throughout every series he played was awesome. But unfortunately, this is just kind of the reality of Eternal Fire. It can't just be Zantares, and Wakadia and Waxic just are not consistent enough to help him out when he needs it. It sucks to see them not make it, because I think they're good enough to do well in this field, but it's just the same old story. It's EF being inconsistent, and that's why they're going home. Other than them, the obvious big miss here is Heroic. This team really could have given a lot of other teams in this field a run for their money, and having Dexter be missing is just going to continue to be an issue. On top of that, this was a step back for Tessas, who struggled throughout this event, which really sucks. I hope they could turn it around and be more consistent, and hopefully Dexter can make it to future tournaments because this team has so much potential. And with that, you guys are now armed with all the knowledge you need to know going to the first day of the Cologne event proper tomorrow. I will be here, as always, once the day's festivities are over to recap it all for you so you are up to date every day of the event. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, like I said, so you keep up to date with all that is going on. All of my videos are powered by Advanced.gg. With the launch of their brand new flavors Pineapple Paradise and Blue Raz Slush, my code LionHeartZ is powered up to 15% off site-wide through Sunday, midnight, Eastern Standard Time. If you go to Advanced.gg, you browse their list of incredible products and you decide to make a purchase, use my code to get that discount, and it lets them know that I sent you their way. Thank you to Advanced.gg, and thank you to my channel members Justin, Jesse, Furley, Bubblesj, and Dr. Cocktor for keeping the lights on. If you want to become a channel member, you can do so at the link in the description down below for $5 a month. While you are down there, you can also follow me on Twitch. I will be live shortly after this video goes live, playing Counter-Strike, talking about Cologne, being mad about Counter-Strike, talking about Cologne. Come by, say hello, I hope to see you there soon, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with another recap. You guys have a wonderful day. Peace.